I mean, we can talk about Tesla all day long. Yeah, they're doing stuff brilliantly. What is everybody else doing? I mean, how are they going to keep up? How?
So, Corey, when do you think that Tesla will outsell General Motors?
I think 2029.
Oh,
So here's a question.
I said 2028. And there's Corey saying 2029.
And most of that's China.
That's,
What I'm focusing on is I think there's a chance that Tesla will outsell General Motors in North America before the decade's over.
Yeah,
and I'm talking total volume, not just EVs.
Right. Well, we're looking at total volume. Yes, you're right. And I like I said, 2028 is the number that I've been hanging my hat on. I moved it from 2030. Corey's at 2029 because he knows I'm old and I can't add.
No, this is when they'll pass General Motors.
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
Not 50%. You said
well, the 50%. Yeah, 50% is what I think is going to be the market share, but I don't think General Motors are going to be able to keep up because there's going to be other people that are coming in, and they're going to eat away at GM's. It doesn't matter. 1 year ain't going to make it. It doesn't matter. It's going to be somewhere around 2028, 2029, 2030. Who cares?
You know, anyone can sell a vehicle for $25,000. I've got a lot of confidence Tesla will make decent margins on a $25,000 car.
Yeah.
If Tesla or anybody can come out with a good $25,000 car, and it's look, the reality is to sell it, you got to have the amenities that people are expecting. The challenge is make a profit on it. But if somebody comes out with a decent electric that they can make a profit on, it's going to be the modern day Model T. Sales will explode.
And that's where I'm coming from as well. I believe that because Tesla is vertically integrated, and like I said, I didn't believe in vertical integration all the way to rubber trees, but at the end of the day, he's made deals with nickel mines. Tesla's made deals with or in buying places where you can mine lithium or refine lithium. If you can control most of the costs, sooner or later you are going to be able to produce something that nobody else can even just dream of.
Yeah.
So and to 25,000, do I think that they'll do that? No, but I know one thing they will do. They will make sure that they make as much profit today as they will on that low cost vehicle.
Yeah, and the low cost vehicle will still include the hardware for and the sensors for their full self-driving capability. Whether or not it works to the level that everybody expects, they'll still be selling every vehicle with that, it's $1,500 to $2,500 worth of computing power and sensor suite, camera suite. That's not something other OEMs are going to do. If they sell a low-cost EV, like the Bolt, does the Bolt have full self-driving capability? No. Probably has a backup camera.
If I sell a car and give something away, but then later on, I can collect more money. Okay? This is like selling razor blades, and that's what they do so well. So now Tesla gets money from when you charge. Tesla gets money if you decide to get full self-driving. Tesla could probably down the road say, well, how about this? How about a monthly fee? Not 15 grand, but we'll turn that on inside your car for a monthly fee of, I don't know, $200 a month or something like that. People are going to look at it. Oh, that's the same as my cable bill or whatever. I'll do it because it's going to be a lot more comfortable, a lot easier for them to get around. And I'm telling you what, when you put stuff into a car like what Tesla's putting in, where, you want to buy, you don't like your car because the rear seats aren't heated? Done. All we do is push the button.
Right.
That's where Tesla can make money, and everybody else won't. At the end of the day, when you look at everything in aggregate, the $25,000 vehicle seems to be well within their reach. I have no idea what everybody else is going to do, but I do know that they're going to be in really good shape here real soon.
And typically, the manufacturing cost is not a huge cost driver in the vehicle, but it is when you're trying to scale and you don't want to build 20 plants, you want to build 12 plants or 10 plants.
Right.
So to hit that 20 million number that Elon has put out there, he's got to get there without having to build 20 assembly plants or 30 assembly plants, if you look at the throughput of traditional OEMs. So I think it shrinks the size of the plant by 40%. I think that's what they said.
That's what they said.
And I see a huge advantage in the body shop, in the paint shop. So now that you're not sending an entire vehicle through the paint shop, the volume of a vehicle, so width-wise, height-wise, length-wise, you can now paint in more of a planar fashion. So if you have two body sides, a hood, fenders, rear fascia, front fascia, the width, the amount of area you're going to have to take up, and even the tooling and articulation of your paint robots changes completely if you're only painting essentially from one direction, if you separated the vehicle and you send it through. So I think there's so many rabbit holes you can go down on the efficiencies that they'll gain with this new way that they're not only building the car, but how they paint the vehicle. Right. The adoption rate for people paying for FSD is below 15%. I think it's 14%. So they've sold 4 million vehicles, and let's say 3.5 million had the hardware. So that's Model 3, Model Y, new S and X. So with that adoption rate, about 3 million of those vehicles are driving around with an extra $1,000 worth of hardware that's not being utilized. So 3 million times 1,000 is what? 3 billion?
Yeah.
$3 billion of hardware that's just driving around the road, not being used to its capability, because it still would need some processing power for your basic safety system. So the $1,000 is actually a very conservative amount of extra computing power for hardware 2.5, 3, and now hardware 4. I think it's wild considering how we've worked with traditional OEMs that'll have 7 wire harnesses for all the trim levels. You know, you have the base model, you have the LT, you have the LS, you have the high country, and they'll have a $27 wire harness and a $23 wire harness and a $21 wire harness for all the different modules, for all the different trim levels. They'll put in so much undue complexity because they don't want to give away $2 extra worth of wiring in the LT versus the LS. But right. Tesla will give away $1,000 worth of computing power on every vehicle, which then drops the complexity level in the plant down to world-class levels. Because every Model 3 and Model Y all gets the same module,
right?
Whether or not, because they don't have all the trim levels. So
right.
Plant complexity reduction is something that's oftentimes overlooked, but a low amount of colors and essentially no variability on their builds besides battery pack size and whether or not you have 2 motors, it's incredible.
Well, here's the thing. That's the Honda mentality. And and they won. They beat everybody. And when you tore their cars to pieces, oh, here's a connector that doesn't go anywhere. Here's a connector that doesn't go anywhere. They don't care because they just got rid of several guys on the assembly line. They don't have to build as big a plant, on and on and on. What you're looking at here is basically the whole body, and you'll see it's already all painted. I don't have to take the doors off, put them back on. I don't have to take the hoods. In a lot of cases, deck lids don't get touched. They just get painted once. But it causes an awful lot of consternation when you're trying to get this thing down the line in the paint department. Robots have to dive in there and do what they have to do in order to get the paint onto the material. When you're looking at something like what is shown here, I mean, a long skinny paint line is a whole lot better than a great big gigantic wide one with that has to run relatively slow.
43% of the cost of a Tesla Model Y is the powertrain, battery pack, the cooling pack, the gearboxes, so that's front and rear motor. That's for an all-wheel drive version in the battery.
And what percent was that again?
To really pull a lot of cost out, they essentially have to slash that 43% of the cost in half. Now, they stated that the cost of their drive unit is going to be about $1,000.
Right.
The vehicle most likely will be rear-wheel drive. So that'll end up being about a quarter of the cost if you factor in you're saving about half the cost on one unit, and then it's only going to be in the rear. So huge savings there. And then from a battery perspective, the vehicle must be smaller, and it'll probably end up being 40 to 50 kilowatt hours and lithium iron phosphate. So based on just rough napkin math, that's about $10,000 to $12,000 off the manufacturing cost of the vehicle.
One of the things that they've done to cut costs is they've gone from wound motors to hairpin motors. Now, what do you get out of that? Well, you get a boost, somewhere between 20 and 30% better power out of that thing, and it costs less, at least 15+% less, because I can fully automate it. It's a great idea. So I'm thinking that there's one good example, but then if we look at the battery, so let's say that this right here, that's your standard line for making a battery pack, and a whole bunch of that is reclaiming or adding and reclaiming of the solvents that they need in order to make that thing. With a dry cell, how about down to 1/3 the size? 2/3 is gone. And when they showed that vision, they had a little. We weren't allowed to take pictures, but they showed the little vision of that. I couldn't believe it. If Tesla starts making their own 48-volt sensors and whatnot, what are these guys going to do? And guess what? They won't have. There will never be a shortage. Never. And I'm sure that the two of you can remember when I used to sit on your show and say, I don't think that this outsourcing is a good idea. I've thought for a long time we went way too far away from vertical integration.
Imagine if you're at GM and you're just now rolling out your Ultium platform, and then they have the Ultify platform, which is supposed to underpin their architecture for probably a decade or two. And just a few weeks ago, Tesla announced 48 volts. That means you're going to be, the whole time that Ultium platform will be in use for the next 10, 20 years, you're going to be obsolete. You're obsoleted already.
I've been telling everybody, we got to have range. We got to have bigger batteries. No, that's not true. What you really need is, number one, aero. Number two, friction. Number three, weight. And number four, which is the absolutely most important, efficiency. And that efficiency can only come by getting rid of these boat anchor things that you don't really need. And one of those boat anchor things that you don't really need is a 12-volt system. If you can move to 48 volts, I can reduce the gauge of the wire. Why is Tesla so much? I mean, when you look at the Audi e-tron, it's got, 110 kilowatt hours or something in their battery. I can't remember, something like
100.
That. What?
I think 100. I think it's 90 or 100 kilowatt hours.
I thought it was more than that. But anyways, what's Tesla got? 73. That one I do know. And yet it goes further, goes faster, and goes longer. What? I don't get it. How can that possibly happen? Because it's the inefficiencies that are associated with the delivering of the power and actually the accepting of the power. Every time somebody does something inside the car with a switch, a button, there's a little bit. You lose every time.
One thing I noticed when I was at the Tesla factory is that the culture of the people is different. When I interface with a lot of my friends and classmates who work at traditional OEMs, typically my conversation with them is like, hey, how's it going? And they talk about their career. They talk about their career inside of GM or Ford. Oh, well, I'm applied for a level 8 and my bonus was this. And it's like, you talk to anyone from Tesla and it's never about themselves. It's always about where the company's going, the advancement of their goals and their mission. It's like a different mentality, and it's kind of actually refreshing to hear people from Tesla versus people from traditional OEMs. And you can kind of see that in how they operate, particularly in their presentation. Sandy and I liked one slide where they talked about how they've internalized the development of their software that they use to run their business. And we're a small business, so Sandy and I will have to have some software for our 401k and our software for our AP and AR, and it's a huge pain. And you try and tailor the software for our small business needs. And Tesla has their own internal software group that develops software for them, how they sell the cars, how they collect the data. That is not how it is at most traditional companies.
So I'm looking at my notes that I took from that, right? And so they called it the Tesla OS. Yeah. And the same software is for sales, it's for orders, it's for financial services, it's for accounts payable, it's for document generation. And they've got a feedback loop too, so that they can learn how to make it even more efficient. I've never heard of any company, automotive or whatever, talk about an OS for the corporation.
Because they buy it. They buy SAP. SAP is like a nightmare. Interfacing it with anything, and we've tried to interface it with our software, and then what they'll do is they'll make a change and it doesn't work anymore. So they tried to lock everything in, but I can guarantee you for sure that whatever Tesla came up with, it's going to be a whole lot simpler.
My take on it was Elon was showing the investors and the world that Tesla is more than just him. So with all the Twitter stuff that's been happening, the stock was dropping when Elon bought Twitter. And to me, it was highlighting all the very impressive people and the roles that they play, and then lining them all up was like a show of force. Like, this is Tesla, not just Elon. It was less about Elon. And a lot of the other investor days and events, Elon talks for 60 or 80% of the time, and oftentimes they'll have somebody else up there.
Yeah.
But Elon had more of a muted role, and frankly, he was less eloquent and prepared than a lot of his other people that were really great.
Yeah.
So, but that's typical Elon. He never is very good on stage when it comes to presenting. So my impression was he was showing the world that Tesla's moving forward, whether or not he's in control or not. He clearly is still the leader, but that's what I think he was trying to show. Like, hey, look at all these people. So when Sandy interviewed Elon in January of 2021, he asked a question. Hey, are you going to put these gigacastings in the Model 3? And his answer was essentially no. So the tooling, the stamping dies, the design of the Model 3 was pretty well established. And they'd been manufacturing it from late 2017, 18, 19, 20. And now it's 2021. So we didn't necessarily, believe that. So we bought a 2021 Tesla Model 3, got it, looked at it, and lo and behold, it was all stampings. But they did update the thermal
that
system.
bucket. The bucket was plastic. Yeah, so that was it.
So they made some improvements, but that core architecture remained the same. So they've shown that once they set out some level of investment for a model, even though they launched the Model Y with these gigacastings, they still make the Model 3 today all stampings. So they have stuck it out. Now, I think they're working on a new Model 3, and that they've shown some being driven around with camo. I think that it's taken them 7 years, essentially, 6 years. Probably the end of this year, they may finally launch a Model 3 with some gigacastings. So I think you'll find a similar timeline. So if they finally launch this low-cost vehicle with this crazy build, modular build, that's a bigger plant tear up than replacing stampings with castings.
Right.
So I think you'll still see anywhere from 7 to 10 years of build out of Model Ys in Shanghai, Giga Berlin, and Texas as is, including the Cybertruck, however they're building the Cybertruck. And then it won't be until you have a generational change. You have a new generation of Model Y and potentially a new plant where they'll change what it looks like, or maybe they'll make a 3-row off-road SUV like a Kia EV9 or a Grand Cherokee Explorer size. Right. You may see them with a new plant and a new vehicle go that way before. So I still think there's too much sunk cost and tooling and design and validation for them to make a monumental change quickly. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
But I just
Hey,
think
look, they're
they've
making
already
money
set a
and they're selling the product, so
Yeah.
they can
Yeah.
keep doing things like they're doing right now.
Yeah. Well, they've also seen a drop in the Model 3. The Model Y basically cannibalized a lot of the sales that they would have got out of the Model 3. And so I think that the Model 3 will be something that once it gets into a lower volume, eaten up by what's going on with Model Y, eventually they'll come up with something new or something different. But it's why bother right now? They're dominating the marketplace. They can't build cars fast enough. I think they got like a half an hour of a backlog. That's about it. I mean, they seem to be able to sell anything they can push out the door.